Hey, I'm Samus.
Hey, and I'm Pat. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Weekly Orbit. The week ending Sunday, July 21st. We are recording a day or two late. WAC is on assignment. So, as special guest, Samus, you've joined us so graciously. Thank you for filling in and look forward to hearing your thoughts and opinions on what's becoming a pretty eventful Sunday.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. With the Biden news, he's resigning, dropping out of the nomination, I guess. But yeah, I'm trying to do my best to start to look more like Whack. My hair's getting longer every time I'm on camera, but I think I might have passed him. We'll see. Uh,
Yeah. So here is what you're referring to. This dropped
yeah,
just maybe an hour ago.
yeah,
Biden has officially dropped out of the 2024 race, has endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris.
yeah.
This was somewhat expected,
I
somewhat,
saw
maybe
it and I was
50-50.
like, oh, his tweet said, "I'm resigning to focus on the rest of my term." And I read it as I'm resigning for the rest of my term. And I was like, I started texting people like, wait, so Kamala's the new president and like why he's dropping out and or like he's resigning. And then somebody was like, what are you talking about? Reread
Yeah,
it.
words
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, one little
Yeah.
word makes all the difference, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's see what the markets think of this. And one thing markets don't like, they like consistency and
Mhm.
predictability. So this kind of throws a little wrench into things, and the markets have responded earlier this morning. I think it was over 3,500. Right now, we're looking at
Mhm.
3,460 on the week. We started the week out. This is a 7-day chart. We were
Yeah.
at 3153, so we're up, a few $100. On the week, we're up almost 11%. So even with a little bit of a drawback today, ETH is showing strength, and we'll get into that,
Mhm.
why that is in a moment. Rocket Pool is at 1831 in US dollars. We are on the ratio. I think we're up a little bit. Last week we're at
Mhm.
0.005. Right now we're at 0.0053. So up just a touch. A little bit. Again, Rocket Pool is down about 3.5% on the last 24 hours. So
I thought it was
there's
interesting
go ahead.
just how it for ETH, the price had jumped up to like almost 1,000 on the news that the ETF was maybe going to launch, and then it retraced pretty much all of that back to 3,000, and now it's kind of priced in right about in the middle of that. But yeah,
Yeah. What's
and
your thoughts on? We'll talk on the next tweet here. Eric
Mhm.
Peltrunas says, I mean, this is from early in the week, so this is not news or
Mhm.
anything. Talking about the final documentation was all submitted to the SEC, and it looks like the ETFs were going live for trading this coming Tuesday. So those will, I think, some of this increase the last week is due to that news. There's an expectation there. I guess the question is this going to be a sell the news event? Are we going to be at 3,500 come Tuesday, and then on Wednesday we'll be at 3,000, or are we going to go to
Right.
4,000? What's your thoughts?
It's hard for me to see any scenario but going up, like at least some in the short term. It's just you look at Bitcoin, they at least whenever it was priced in from right when the news kind of broke of it was expected, that was like in November. I think Bitcoin was on like 30K or something, and then it just kind of continually went up until the launch. And I think it was a little bit up and down, but mostly after the launch, it continued. Maybe it was like 50K and then it continued up to 60, 70 in the spring. And now it's kind of been floating there. But it seems like ETH, I mean, 2 months ago, nobody thought it was going to happen and it was priced only a few $100s less. And like I said, it kind of went up and back down. So I'm like, there hasn't been any price movement for that. And there's so many factors of what could impact price going up. So it's just I don't know what it is on like sentiment on crypto Twitter. It's like always bearish on like any short day to day, and so people seem like they psych themselves out of things. But yeah, I don't know. It just seems. Uh, I mean, it's a longer conversation, but all the supply side dynamics, everything's just a little bit different with ETH. I think in a positive way compared to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin moved. ETH did kind of outperform Bitcoin since then, mostly, I think, but still,
Well, let's see
that's
what
not accounting for the ETF. So yeah. Yeah.
Let's see what crypto Twitter is saying. This is a post by Daniel Got the Hits, which you sent me. I'll summarize what he says here. He says, essentially, all retail is not really interested in crypto at this point, but institutional money is. All right,
Hmm.
and I think this is, we look back at the last 6 months, and ETH has just been floating in Bitcoin
Hmm.
too, kind of in this range. And
Hmm.
it's because there's just no new money coming in from
Right.
anyone. It's the same people trading the same pie to each other.
Right.
What could change that is you start getting influx of institutional money through ETFs possibly, and then the landscape starts to
Hmm.
look a little different. And then maybe
Yeah.
that's the key for retail to come back in. They see because human psychology is, oh man, look at the prices going up. Let me go
Right.
buy.
Right.
Smart
Yeah.
money buys when it's low, but most people
Yeah.
buy when it's going up.
Wait till it's interesting. Even just anecdotally, I don't hear anybody talking about it. Don't hear anybody interested in that type of conversation in real life that I talk to. So,
Mm.
but I think one of the things I'm most interested to see that I haven't heard talked about as much is how much money flows from Bitcoin to ETH as
Mm.
people say, okay, I want to balance to market weighted. And right now, there's been no way to really balance that in a significant way to ETH. But like when it launches, is there a chance you see some Bitcoin outflows that, hey, you've got people who say, like, I'm going to match exactly, like, I don't know enough about either of these to try to just pick one. They have different narratives, cover different surface area. I'm just going to follow the market weighted exposure. And you see, I don't think it's going to be overnight, but like, yeah, even just the same amount of money that's already been locked in, which is like record setting for ETFs, how much of that moves into ETH to rebalance? And then going forward, also, does that have any effects as new money? Maybe there's people who digital gold, the pet rock, like Jamie Dimon sometimes
Mm.
calls it, like, I don't buy that, but I want a productive asset and I like the
Mm.
tech play. And so maybe it appeals to different people, but I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting the first couple weeks and then like, I think mostly noise, and then 6 months down the road where things at will be a lot of signal.
I think that's the more interesting thing is where are we in 6 months, right? Because we
Hmm.
saw if Bitcoin launched, I think the first couple of weeks after the price
Hmm.
went down, and then it's
Yeah.
been creeping back up since.
Hmm.
Um, and that the allocation, I think I can't remember his name from Bitwise. He was mentioning
Oh,
that when he
yeah,
speaks
Matt.
to,
Yeah,
yeah, I forgot his
Kwong or
name.
Hogan or something.
Matt Hogan,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
mentions when he's speaking to his institutional partners about the product, they're really interested in doing, hey, the market weight is 70% Bitcoin, 30%
Hmm.
ETH.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'd like to allocate because that's an easy way to do it. Or some might be like,
Hmm.
I'm going 50-50 because I like more of a
Right.
tech play.
Hmm.
And so he hears that a lot. But I think, again, that's going to take time for it to actually reflect in the
Hmm.
market price, because these things they roll out, there's
Hmm.
it seems like there's a friction there between,
Hmm.
okay, they go to live trading Tuesday, but when you see, how long does it take for financial planners to get their clients to actually put money into this stuff? Oh,
Right.
well, I meet with my financial planner once a year. He goes over my
Right.
plan and then we reallocate then. And I don't meet him until November
Hmm.
every year, right?
Yep.
So it's just, I
Yeah.
think
I've heard some of
us
the
in the
big guys. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to finish the thought to say a lot of stuff in crypto world, we like to see things happening, snap, snap,
Hmm.
snappity quick. And in the real world, that's just not how things work. It takes time.
Yeah, and I've heard like a lot of the big names, their normal process is something gets approved, trades for a little bit, and then they've got internal reviews, and that can take 6 months, 12 months to where some of the big names haven't even started buying Bitcoin yet.
Right.
And so they'll finally have exposure later in the year. But yeah, I think those things just kind of take time, like you're saying.
Let's look at another tweet from Chris Berninski. He seems pretty bullish. He says, with ETF slated to go live, Trump speaking at the Bitcoin conference, BTC and ETH soul charts look like the below with equities. While
Hmm.
equities are weak, it's hard to see a world where we don't send next week. So this is some
Yeah.
bullish, I guess, technical analysis chart mixed in with maybe some politics. A lot of folks are
Hmm.
bullish on a potential Trump administration and
Hmm.
that maybe factor into things. So he's pretty excited about the charts. I'm not a TA guy. Who knows? I
Right.
don't. To me, it's like there's a 50% chance we go to 4,000. There's a 50%
Hmm.
chance we go to 3,000 in the next
Right.
week.
Yeah.
We'll
I think
see.
what another interesting factor is with Bitcoin, it was the first like 4 months, 3 or 4 months where the ETFs were live, where everybody's watching outflows versus inflows because it's, what's the net positive, how much new total money's coming in. And a lot of grayscale Bitcoin was everybody was leaving constantly because it had the high fee. And so that was
Right.
just this constant outflow. And it's all noise in the short term, I think, because it's probably people mostly rotating to a different,
Yeah.
exposure. But um, Bitcoin hadn't fully closed to the market NAV value for Grayscale, so you couldn't really exit until it went live, and the ETF helped close it. But the
Right.
playbook's already kind of happened for ETH to where I think people felt comfortable with it. So if you look at it now, there's basically no discount anymore. So if you wanted to exit, you could. And
Hmm.
then separately, they've got the mini Grayscale ETF that's set to release, I think, alongside the main one that'll
Yeah.
have the lowest fee on the market. So already, like, I think 10% of their assets got of the Grayscale ETH got allocated to that. It's like an airdrop to anybody holding it in crypto
Pretty
terms.
much.
And so I think that'll already stem some of those outflows. It's already at least 10% muted. But then from the rest, maybe it's not as strong of an outflow because of that. Like people already exited if they wanted to, or but
Hmm.
otherwise, I think people will just rotate and that'll work itself out. So.
Yeah, and it's the other thing factor is it's summer, and trading
Hmm.
volume traditionally is like lower in summer just because people are busy, like
Hmm.
out riding their bikes, playing, go on vacation,
Touching
you
grass.
know, touching
Yeah.
grass. Except for people like you who are going to spend
Uh
Sundays working
huh.
on tokenomics stuff.
Yeah. I touch virtual grass, digital
Virtual
grass.
grass, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's just another quick tweet. One final uh, uh, news about the Mount Gox. Finally, after what it seems like 10 years that's been going on,
Yeah.
that the Bitcoin is being distributed to those who are holding it back on Mount Gox whenever it went under.
Hmm.
And so there's talk of, well, there's going to be buy pressure. I'm sorry, sell
Hmm.
pressure. Is some of that sell pressure going to then rotate into ETH?
Hmm.
Again, I don't know. But hey,
Yeah.
if you were holding Bitcoin in, correct me if I'm wrong, was it
Uh
2013
huh.
or 14 Mount
It
Gox
was,
went under?
yeah, before my
And
time.
it was like forced holding.
Yeah.
You had like, say you had 10
Imagine.
BTC in
Yeah.
2013
And
and
it was
it's
worth
just,
not that much. Yeah.
yeah, now
At that
you
time.
all of a sudden you get dropped 10 BTC. You are
Yeah.
in a very nice
600K. Yeah.
position for savings.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like you're saying, how much rotates or do people just sell? I think the funny thing is, at the time, also what else was popular? I think Bitcoin Cash was like one of the main four or
Mm.
something like that. So, yeah, just some of the other ones that are like completely irrelevant now. It's like if you still have any of that for whatever reason, you're about like those are definitely getting dumped. So, but
Yeah, yeah.
for Bitcoin itself,
That'd
I
be
don't know.
really
Yeah.
awesome though. Like,
Uh-huh.
imagine when it went under, those folks who are, it almost makes me think, oh, maybe this is my win for the week. Those who are
Yeah.
BTC holders on Mount Gox, and now they're
How many
finally
of them came
getting,
ahead too from not being able to sell and now gonna get
I
this?
guarantee,
Yeah.
because if, generally speaking, I think if you bought BTC back that long ago,
Hmm.
you're kind of a degenerate.
Right.
And there's,
Or
I
just
say
crazy believer,
95% of
but
those
most,
folks would have
yeah,
less money today had
probably.
because they would have traded
It would have
away or
sold at
played.
some point on the big drop or going up. Yeah,
Yeah.
long
Or I'm
before
going to
now.
buy some stupid altcoin that's going to
Hmm.
1000x,
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
So I imagine like this is just a windfall for those who are they're
Hmm.
in that early and then they came out they're gonna come out
Hmm.
really ahead. But hey,
But
this is a Rocket Pool show,
yeah,
so let's talk about Rocket Pool RPL price. We had a nice jump. If we go back to the chart, we see this really big jump
yeah.
on July 17th.
Hmm.
We went from like 17 and change to over $21 in just less than 24 hours. It was like a over 20% increase, I think.
Hmm.
And I think part of that came from this interview with Hester Peirce, commissioner for the SEC. She was asked about staked ETFs, and her quote was, ETF staking, quote, always open for reconsideration as far as I'm concerned. So that really pumped RPL along with Lido. That a lot of that, some of that was retraced, of course, because traders trade
Right.
and this stuff. My personal opinion on, I think just staking ETFs is a different animal than just a spot one. And I think there's some operational issues that need to be worked out with issuers. And I think,
Right.
I mean, at in the best case scenario, I would just guess the earliest something like this you'd see is second half of 2025 at the earliest. I still think we might be a ways away, even if you had a change of leadership at the SEC. It's going to take some time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, one thing that's interesting to me is like generally ETFs need to be liquid to maintain their net asset value to where with gold or Bitcoin, you can, if somebody's ready to sell and exit, they can basically keep the same amount of total Bitcoin that they need to, and markets have to be liquid enough to withdraw at any point or sell.
Right.
But with staked ETH, it's kind of interesting. Generally, if you're actually, like, say, it goes to BlackRock and then they decide to stake it, they can't just immediately withdraw and give it to customers right away. So it's kind of like mostly you'd be okay, but what happens if some kind of bug happens, minority client or especially majority client gets slashed, something like that, and everybody tries to exit all at once or something weird. If there's a long queue, it's like you can't redeem that. You have to sit in the queue and wait. And so would they, I know that would be a risk they would list, but can it even work functionally where they could? So the only, what um, seems more possible could be what crypto already figured out a while ago with DeFi with uh, liquid staking. So will
Mm-hmm.
it be possible that ETFs decide, hey, we're going to hold a basket of LSTs, or they pick top two or top, maybe it's just Lido staked ETH, I don't know, whatever's most liquid that they can say, hey, you're not buying ETH. We're not going to guarantee you something that we can't potentially redeem, but you can buy this liquid staking token and
Mm-hmm.
it has its own market value. It's supposed to track with staked ETH, but that kind of resolves itself of it can be sold at a discount and they're still able to redeem it exactly with what the market says and keep track of it that
Mm-hmm.
way. Um, but yeah, I know Jasper was tweeting about some LST ideas right around the time this went live, and so that might have been part of it. Of okay, maybe it does make sense, yeah, for them to do LSTs, but yeah,
Right. Yeah, those are those operational issues they'd have to work out and figure.
right,
Here's one of his Jasper's tweets. He says LSTs are the road of least resistance, and they offer a best risk adjusted return because there's less overhead, much lower slashing risk, better access to the underlying. Overall, much higher risk adjusted return compared to a centralized staking service. ETF providers know this. So I think, if you think, could our ETH be part of that basket? Obviously, ST ETH has more liquidity, but you
hmm
might, if you're a fund, you might say, let's diversify a little bit
hmm
because perhaps what happens if ST ETH depegs
right,
temporarily? At least we're
hmm
not all our eggs in one
all in
basket,
one,
right?
and
So perhaps
there's a lot of
that's
governance. What does that look like? And legal side of things, if the DAO can control it or not, and yeah. And it's
there's
interesting
also
just to
a
picture even like, oh, the IMC, for example, providing liquidity for like BlackRock or something. It's like, I don't know if that's how that would
I
work.
know.
But
The
yeah.
other thing is, like, is there a centralizing risk when you get these ETFs? Say they use Coinbase CBETH. And
hmm
they're like, okay, Coinbase is our custodian.
Right.
They that CBETH. It's seamless. We're just going to use them. And does that present some problems as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as a ethos, generally, I would be concerned about ETFs going live, especially the sooner they would come live if they're staking ETFs. Just it's one thing to for them to control a certain amount of the supply, which is already not like great in my mind, in terms of would they try to make demands about certain things, or if there's a fork, like how much of the value is they get a say of basically like, hey, all of our ETH is going on this chain, and that's what we're deciding, and users can't really opt out in that sense besides selling, and but especially once it's staked, because now it's like they can actually have say over consensus, and we can't, it would definitely get messy at that point potentially. But yeah, I think I would be nice if solutions like Rocket Pool could grow. We get past, instead of being so small of a market share percentage, being able to grow. And what if
Mm.
we're at our limit of 22%? And just generally, what if things are a lot healthier? There's more solo stakers or home stakers who the barrier to entry got lower over
Mm.
time, and it's just a healthier market so that it can withstand that. But I'd be worried about, you know, lobbying, and it's like right now the lobby is kind of our friends because everything is so anti-crypto, but what about those nuances of self-custody versus custodian? And is
Mm.
Coinbase going to lobby to be the provider, or are they going to lobby for like the best interest of the network? It's like, they do have financial incentives, and technically they have to meet those to their shareholders. And
Mm.
I don't know. Yeah, it gets messy. So.
And Coinbase is, I think, it could be a central player in all this. They've set themselves up really nicely with these
Hmm.
ETFs. I think most of the ETFs, the BTC and the ETH, are using Coinbase as their custodian.
Hmm.
So a lot of these TradFi institutions will already have developed relationship with Coinbase.
Hmm.
So they might look at Coinbase and say, okay, what do you guys think we should do? We're going to
Hmm.
come out with a staked product. We'd like to
Yeah,
partner with you. And
yeah. Maybe
they might,
Coinbase Ventures, who's on ODAO,
yeah, right.
says,
You
"Hey,
wonder
well, we
about
got this
that.
protocol called Rocket Pool." No, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. They're like out of, like you're saying, both the Bitcoin and the ETH. Like out of the list of custodians, I think it's like Coinbase for all of them except like Fidelity maybe was one
Yeah.
of them. And it's just like when you put that in like crypto terms, it's like imagine everybody using the same custodian. It's like
Right.
we've run that play before. That's kind of risky, and I know it's different because it's TradFi, but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that is all like Coinbase has a lot of control over things. So.
They will, yeah. So I guess you'd have to put some trust in Brian Armstrong. Like he just seemed,
Hmm.
he is a OG of
It's
it,
level-headed.
and
Hmm.
he seems to have. I mean, they created base, right?
Right.
There seems to
It's a
be
good sign.
an underlying culture there of the
Hmm.
understanding the decentralization and
Hmm.
perhaps maybe the easy option would be, hey, just you want to do staked ETH? Well, we have CB ETH, and you can buy it right through
Hmm.
us. And
Hmm.
maybe he'd say, well, we do have CB ETH, but also it'd be cool to include a
Hmm.
basket of LSTs for safety, for diversity of the not centralizing all this stake just with
Right.
one LST and blah 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 blah. You'd
Maybe
hope
there's,
that, but
yeah,
we'll see.
maybe there's people who, Coinbase is not like they have a monopoly on that. Right now, they're custodian for a lot of them, but they don't all have to. If there's competitive ETFs right now, there's like 10 of them or 11 launching for just vanilla ETH. Maybe there's a bunch that launch for staked, and maybe you've got some who are trying to appeal to a certain group that say, "Hey, we're going to try to do more decentralized instead of this CB ETH. We're going to do, you know, different options." And
Maybe
maybe
we'll
I don't
see.
know. I don't know how
Well,
that
speaking
works.
of increasing Rocket Pool's uh, market share, I would be remiss not to touch base with you on our tokenomics rework
Hmm.
and where we're at.
Hmm.
I think part of the reason we're doing this is because we do want to increase market share of Rocket Pool. I think we're at like 1.5% of stake
Hmm.
at the moment, or something like that. We want to increase. So where are we on tokenomics?
We're close. We're so close. The home stretch. Yeah, I mean, you can always, it's the kind of fun thing about a DAO, I guess, is everything's public, and we're working in a Discord thread where it's updates are being shared, everything's happening in GitHub. So you can go look if you want to see exactly, but generally we're kind of doing the final checklist, just trying to get everything updated,
Mm-hmm.
and would hope to post a sentiment poll in the next day or two. So that's exciting. Hopefully that works out, but at the least it's still a lot of work that is behind us now, and it feels good to be looking at like where the state of things are, and it being really close to something that we could feel good about. But I think uh, yeah, one of the major changes, if you hadn't noticed in the thread yet, we haven't really been trying to like advertise it, I guess, was we during Saturn 1 plan to just do voter share and node operator commission. So there's no surplus share in Saturn 1. So
Mhm.
it'll be simple, like initial starting values are 5% to node operator commission and 9% to voter share. And so that'll be a lot simpler. I think that'll allow things to be more competitive for ETH only node operators and competitive if you're trying to decide as we make RPL staking optional. It's no longer a requirement. It'll help it stay more attractive. And we decided to keep RPL issuance to node operators until Saturn 2. So instead of cutting it to zero on the day Saturn 1 launches, we're going to keep the same 5% inflation with 3.5% going to node operators all the way until Saturn 2. And we're going to remove the cliff during Saturn 1. So anything below 10% up to, so basically 0 to 15% is the like linear range, kind of like 10 to 15% is now. And then after 15%, it's diminishing returns, it's logarithmic.
So
So,
if you're a node operator and you're at 5%
yes.
collateral with your RPL,
Hmm.
you'll get RPL.
Yeah, so we would remove that cliff to where you get eligible for your proportional amount for 5%, which would be half of what you'd get if you had 10% instead of
Okay.
zero and everything starting at 10. So that would be because part of like why was that requirement there in the first place? It was to meet the minimum requirement that you had to bring if you're going to open a validator. So is this minimum stake? That was what the value capture said.
Mm.
This percent is relative to how many validators we have, but we're going to have a new value capture mechanism, and
Mm.
we're not going to be forcing any kind of minimum requirement. So it doesn't make sense to try to still keep a cliff there and rewards because, yeah, it's not relevant anymore. So,
So is
yeah.
that breaking news? Are you breaking news here on the weekly orbit with this?
Yeah, if you follow the threads, it's all public. So you could
It's
have,
all there.
the alpha was there if you were looking for it, but
Mm.
yeah.
So that might
Um,
even out because as we come to reward day, so you see
hmm
some buying. Like if you're
hmm
at say 9.5%, you
hmm
might, well, maybe I'll buy just a little bit of RPL just to top me off.
hmm
If people know that in advance that, hey, I won't need to do that anymore, you
hmm
won't maybe get these little spikes on reward day.
Maybe, yeah, I mean, depends how many months we have left, and there's still all of those months in between that you'd be
Yeah.
missing out on rewards. We talked about stepping stones. Maybe after the rework is voted on, we could revisit lowering collateral requirements or the cliff or whatever if we wanted to. I don't
Mhm.
know. That's kind of, we haven't decided in terms of where attention's going to be. We're just trying to focus on the rework, but at least Saturn 1 rework that would be removed. But I mean, one thing that saves in the short term that's even worse than any benefit you get from like, oh, I'm gonna like decide to top off. I mean, I think I saw one of the more recent snapshots. It was something like 25% of node operators or of validators were above the minimum collateral requirement. So three-fourths of people are below it. And how many of them are topping up? I mean, some of them are, maybe those that are
Not many.
close, but there's a lot of people who just exit. They're saying, I'd rather at least get some rewards, so I'll exit and move to 16 ETH validator, and then they have lower exposure, or they exit so that, um, yeah,
Yeah.
just their general exposure is above the requirement, and they keep all their RPL. So it's like things that are detrimental to us in the short term. It would be nice if we remove that and say,
Right.
hey, you don't need to exit. You don't need, like, you can get your proportional share of rewards. Maybe people are less likely to be angry and sell,
Yeah.
you know?
And you feel that I think it would improve sentiment as
Hmm.
you feel like you're being punished in a way if you're both
Yeah,
10. Oh,
right.
today's reward day, but not for you.
Yeah.
Right?
You mean
Oh, it's for that guy, but
purchase
not
day?
you. Oh, and then
Yeah.
next month comes like, oh, it's reward day again, but not for you again. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh man, what the hell? So
Yeah.
that would remove that. And you're like, hey, at least I'm getting something here. And I don't feel so pessimistic that I'm
Hmm.
not being included. It's more inclusive. And
Right.
I think that's a good thing to have. Hey, you're part of the Rocket Pool community. We're going to reward
You
you
paid
for
your
being
fair
a node
share.
operator, right?
Right. It's
Um,
been a consistently bad UX for node operators. Is that cliff
yeah,
forcing them to make that stressful decision or not, and then you have to buy at a time you may not have wanted to, so less than ideal, but you got to keep the interest on it or
yeah,
the
right,
issuance on it. So yeah.
correct. Um, two more questions on that. One is, I know the team, they reached out for some legal advice on
hmm
terms of an LP. Do we
hmm
do
Burn
burn? Do we do just
just
give it all
more
to
voter
what
share.
voter?
hmm
What do you got? Voter share? Do we have any idea of when we're going to get some legal feedback on that stuff?
Yeah, I haven't heard any news. Could be good to ask again. I think it's something where we're not planning on waiting for that feedback to
Yeah.
move forward with Saturn One, and I haven't heard any concern from the team or from anyone else about it in terms of like we can't do this, and also like if we don't have any like clear confirmation that what we're doing now before Saturn is legally sound. Like
Yeah.
I think we're kind of moving in a it's a moving target. Like regulators are going after everybody, but maybe they're kind of tampering back with the winds are changing a little bit, and maybe they change,
Hmm.
especially by the fall, depending on
Right.
who wins the election and how they handle that. Including maybe there's a younger Democrat that gets nominated. I don't know. I mean, if Kamala is the nomination and she follows Biden, I don't know that things would change much. Maybe it would, but I have no
Hmm.
idea. But I think, yeah, generally the voter share would was going to be there in both Saturn One and Saturn Two, no matter what we use. That it was like voter share and then also something else, including more voter share, or just the voter share. So it was going to have to be there no matter what. And so we're
Right.
sticking with what I would call the safer option, which is like the one that we know we have to do anyways. And um, from there, it's like we can we do still want to vote before Saturn One goes live on which surplus share option we want to do for
Yeah.
Saturn Two, so that it's not like you have this incumbent that's hard to overcome. Like we still want to have a fair shot of voting between them, but that also gives us time between when the poll and the general rework vote goes live, maybe in the next week or two, and when Saturn One goes live, we might have significant amount of time to look into more of the modeling and legal analysis and which one's the best option. But
Well,
we
it's
would
good
still,
is
yeah, Saturn One
we
just do
don't
voter share. So,
we don't need to make every single decision right now, which that
right.
is nice. We can move forward with some of
hmm
these, a couple of these open questions because it's not, we're not putting it in the Saturn one. Okay, we're,
hmm
we can decide on that later. And I like that
hmm
idea. We're going to just keep pushing the ball forward up the
hmm
mountain, and we'll worry about
Yeah.
the some of these questions down the road. And it's
hmm
good, and we'll discuss it, and that's fine.
hmm
We'll have time.
hmm
Last question is, we talked about Saturn one. What is your timeline, you think, on it going to
hmm
mainnet?
I think most optimistic seems like Q1, but probably Q2. But I think I'm just basing that off of how long have previous releases taken, along
Hmm.
with the scale, like the scope of how much work is involved, and how long do audits take, and where's the governance process at that point in time.
Hmm.
I think it seems like this time, generally, there's been a healthier process of settling the ideas and the RPIPs in a stable state before. So basically, the DAO and the team, everybody kind of agreeing on it
Hmm.
before deciding what's going into each upgrade, and then for the team to be able to work on it. Um, and that's part of kind of setting living documents instead of final documents, so we can vote on the ideas generally, and we've got the specifications as best as we can create them right now, but
Hmm.
over time, as they start to implement things, they may come back and say, oh, we need to make this small tweak here or there, but it's more of implementation details on a living document than, oh, we're going to scrap this whole like tokenomics idea and do a different idea under the same name. So I think being able to sort of have a healthier governance of like, hey, we're voting, all that. But I think from there, yeah, it seems like at least 6 months is just a wild guess,
Right.
which I don't want it to be too long. If CSM goes live this fall,
I know.
towards the end of the fall, then hopefully as
Is
soon as we can get it
Are
out.
mega pools going to be in Saturn one or two?
So they would be in Saturn One.
Okay.
It'll be a
And I
requirement.
know that
Yeah.
the team's they've already started work on the mega pool code and stuff, right? They've been doing that behind the scenes. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
So my win, I think your win, you want to go with your win for the week first? And I'll
Sure.
dovetail off that. I think we go with the same.
The win would be getting to a huge milestone, which would be the sentiment poll. After 6+ months of work in going from ideation phase to narrowing down the ideas to trying to specify them as clearly as possible to explaining them well with good explainers and trying to make sure everybody understands it, and then getting feedback and going back and forth on, different proposals. It's nice to be super close to that final milestone for this phase, which would be advancing in governance to sentiment poll and then snapshot and maybe our first on-chain. I think that probably wouldn't be the first on-chain because this will be living documents. On-chain would be like, you've got contracts you're ready to upgrade to, but
right.
At least snapshot and sentiment would be really nice.
That's my win for the week too. We've I think we've been working on tokenomics, the community, for about 8 months now, 7 to 8 months. I think that's a sentiment poll on a solid proposal is a milestone. We're at the precipice of that, hopefully this week. And I feel like we've come around, on the racetrack, the horse, you're around the final turn. I feel like that's where we're kind of at that, right? All the governance stuff is in getting community feedback and ideas and vetting them. And that's the really hard work that you and a lot of others in the community have been doing. And I feel like a sentiment poll is that milestone, that third corner that we're turning. So that's great.
Yeah, I'm eager
Thanks for doing
to
all the
see.
work you do.
Thanks. Yeah, eager to see how people respond. There'll probably be, the poll will be like, this is great, this is good enough. Maybe I want to focus on hashing out a different idea, the 1KX proposal, or maybe it's I'm just undecided in general, but kind of leaving comments on like, what do you want to see next if you're not ready. Optimistic, hopeful people are ready to go to snapshot vote. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to vote yes, but at least getting to a space where we're ready to vote and find out, not just, okay, you've got like one little face and a name that says yes on the forum, but like everybody's with different vote power. Like, what's the DAO say? I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Samus. You've been generous with your time filling in. We'll have hopefully Whack back next week. But in the meantime, thanks for listening and watching, everyone. Make sure you like and subscribe. Samus, enjoy the summer heat wherever you are.
And get some water.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure you'll be busy with doing tokenomics stuff tonight. So we thank you for all the work you do. And we'll see you in the near future, I hope.
Cheers. Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, see ya.